Mr. President, I don't know if you want to move up the change order. Do you want to do that now, or do you want to wait until we get it on the agenda?
We'll wait till we get the agenda. Okay.
So then what I'll do then,
Yeah,
that's fine. What we can do is, I did want to bring up, and I know that Mr. Fox has a question about this. I want to review some things. Talking with Gary Verstappen, I want to read just a brief summary of his comments as it relates to DSA and our revisions and where we're at on that, the status of it. It's an update, if you will, in our office of that of JTS Construction. We're coordinating a DSA over-the-counter back check appointment. So they do have an appointment, it's a back check appointment. And that basically is to wrap up that DSA thing, and basically it's next week. They should have DSA stamped approvals no later than November 6th of 2014. So the security of these approvals still allow JTS to be on schedule for the fabrication and delivery of the buildings. Obviously, as noted, we also talked about the gym, and that already has DSA approval. We're going back to the original DSA approval, and so that's intact, and there shouldn't be obviously any problem there. We also will then go back, once we get that approval, we'll then go back for Building D, which is the remaining 4 classrooms that we'll be adding to this project in Phase 2. So, but we're not doing that yet. We don't want to mess up DSA approval in Phase 1. So we're doing that first, and then we'll go back through there. So we don't anticipate any issue, but is it getting close to critical path? Yes.
So when is the meeting actually scheduled for?
Actually, for next week.
And I don't understand the term backstop, but
It's a back check.
back check. The way you're describing it, what I envision is sitting down with the guy who's actually got to stamp off or sign off, and telling you exactly what red lines he needs.
Well, we've already done that. There's been comments. We've responded to their comments, and we resubmitted, and so there's been this back and forth. The back check, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, it's like the final check.
So you sit there and he says, yes, you did this, I asked you to do that, yes, you did that, I asked you to do that. You didn't do that, is there a reason why? And purportedly you have a good one, and then he signs off right there?
Well, yes and no, because the final thing is that you've got to make sure that you've made a payment, of course. And I'm not going to give you the final signature pages. It's where Jim and I are working on making sure, give me a bill, tell me what the invoice, I'm going to pay you now. So I'll give them an advance, warrant, if you will, to make sure they don't withhold those plans. So we're trying to, preempt a lot of these things, but we anticipate that we'll be fine. It's tight.
Thank you.
Free cash and anomaly.
Thank you.
You bet.
Good luck to the cross-country team tomorrow. They're cargo loading at my house now, so hope they do well. And when's the next home game for football?
Halloween.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Halloween night.
Hopefully we'll just go.
Ed?
Just wanted to share one comment about the Vasquez High. My son started 9th grade this year, and like any parent would be, you have some concerns going from middle school to high school. And I just wanted to share a couple of comments that he'd given me about the school. And one thing he said to me is that, of course, our aesthetics and facilities are not perfect there, right? They're not perfect. And to him, it's really not a big deal to him and his friends and all that, because he has a group of friends that obviously go all in 9th grade now. And he said if there's, anything such as true beauty being on the inside, right? He's saying that Vasquez High really has that, and that he looked at in terms of the school spirit, first and foremost, where the kids are just like, he said the school spirit is, because we have some friends that saw this and we've gone to places, so he's seen different schools that have much more resources than we do, right? And he's just not faced by any of that, like he's been to Glanstead High, saw this, like I said, and John Boros High School, we have some friends out with him, and the games and all that. But he said just the school spirit is just off the scale, at Vasquez, and the kids, the seniors, the juniors are very accepting of the freshmen and the sophomores. I'm sure there's, cases where his experience is not shared by every student. So I don't want to be naive to that. I'm sure that some kids go into 9th grade and they don't have the best time. But he just said this, the kids have been very accepting, have been very forthcoming with, their help and knowing the campus. Like, when we had the orientation, the kids that took us around, the whole family, helped them again in the first few days of the school. With them, where to go and all that. These kids, came up and addressed, what the different classes are, this and that. And also the teachers, he said the teachers are very, again, forthcoming with their help, and not only to him, but his friends and all that they're really excited about the school. And a lot of kids are talking about the construction, they're going to have a new, these ninth graders are really excited because they're going to have a couple of years of a brand new school at the end, and at the end, in the 11th and 12th grade. So just wanted to relay that to you guys, and I think this is the results of the efforts and the kind of the culture you try to foster, you and Mr. Budhraja, and it's just really refreshing to hear as a parent. And he was really excited about it. He wanted to somehow come and, tell the board and all that. And I said, well, talk to the principal and, go through the right protocol, maybe write an email or whatever. But I just think that the school spirit, or whatever we're doing to promote that excitement to these students, I think it's really working. I just want to make a comment about that. And thank you, Mr. Budhraja.
I have some observations. You said it very well.
Well, thank you.
There. It was a very good transition. Very happy little people. But it can be a tough time for all.
Yeah, exactly. Challenging. Thank you. That's it, Mr. President.
Okay, Larry?
Nothing.
Just, the board may have already read it, I'm not sure, but just to put it on record, I did write an editorial piece in the paper because of the concerning things I was hearing coming out of Duval. And I did submit that editorial to the Antelope Valley Press, the Country Journal, the Dulce News, the Signal, as well as the Santa Cruz Gazette. And I actually added a slight amendment to the one to the Gazette because my counterpart, President Duval, tried to suggest that we were being taken over by the state and on the verge of fiscal collapse, and I felt I needed to put an extra piece in there to counter that. So I just wanted to make sure you folks did it, and I did put my disclaimer in there that I was not speaking on behalf of the entire board, simply giving my own opinion. And I just felt it was necessary to do. We're trying to say something without saying anything in regard to the lawsuit. So with that, we'll move on to...
Wait,
yes, sir.
one thing. I think, first of all, your letter was excellent. And second of all, I think you did say something. You didn't go into the merits, which we're not allowed to do, but what you did bring out very clearly and succinctly was that they were dispersing information that was totally incorrect. And so you brought that to everyone's attention, which I too thought that was something that had to be done.
Well, yeah, I just think it needed to go. I don't think you could just go unheeded.
You need to come back with efforts and
I
something.
have to continue to say things. So, for whatever it's worth, I'm not sure if it got printed in all publications. I know it did the Gazette and the Country Journal. I'm not sure about the others. 10.0 Education, Student Services. 10.1 Proclamation American Education Week, November 17th through the 21st. We have a move.
I'll move.
A second.
I'll second.
Okay, and the proclamation is basically this board in this district supporting American Education Week. For the record, the final paragraph, therefore be it resolved, there's a spelling error there.
American Education Week.
Blame it on the computer.
The word resolve. that, any discussion by staff or board? Call to question?
Aye.
11.0 Personnel Services, 11.1 Approval of Certificated Employment, employee number 141548, Social Science at VHS. Do we have a move?
I'll move.
Second?
Second. Larry.
Any staff discussion? No? Discussion by the board? Call to question?
Aye.
11.2 Approval of Classified Employment, employee number 141549, Special Ed Aide at Metal Arts.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Discussion by staff or board? Hearing none, call to question?
Aye.
11.3, approval of coaching personnel, employee number 141550, girls varsity assistant basketball. We have a move.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Call to question?
Aye.
11.4, approval of consultant agreement with Jessica Hawley for occupational therapy services. Do we have a move?
I'll move.
Second?
I'll second. What is this?
Mr. President, let me
Is this
explain
deja
this a little
vu?
bit.
Is this deja vu, or am I just
Well, this
particular
particular,
ago and recognizing names that I shouldn't be recognizing? It's like it came up before.
well, it may have, but I don't think it was formally approved. This is, again, this is all indicative to the MOU that we have with the charter schools.
Okay.
And this will be recouped in all of the costs, or 100% of these costs will be recaptured through any of the charter schools that utilize their services.
Just trying to bring up my agenda, which decided to disappear. Anyway, any discussion? Call to question? Aye. 11.5, job description, behavior training aid, a special education aid. We have a move.
I'll move.
Second. Any staff discussion on this?
Same scenario.
Were these all budgeted by the charter school?
That is correct. This is just a job description. We're not hiring yet, but this is something
Right.
that, I'm sorry.
But these positions are all
Absolutely.
previously identified in their budget?
They are in the budget, and we have, let's say currently after we do position withdrawal, there's multiple positions that have yet gone and filled, but we're not gonna fill them until obviously there's some sort of need. And as kids come in, and as you guys know that, every year we get new students come in, or new IEPs, or whatever the case is, and we have to respond accordingly. That would be the case in this particular case. We're looking at a specific job description that has to do with behavioral training aid, as opposed to just, and I hate to use the term, but just an instructional aid. But this is a special training as it relates to an instructional aid. And it's a job description that we're looking at to make sure that, again, that we're in compliance with special education law.
Okay. Any response by the board? Call the question?
Aye.
Aye. 12.0, business and financial. 12.1, resolution 14-15.2, calling for a repeal of reserve cap for 2014-15 school year. No move, a second?
I'll second.
Steve, if you would, just in case there's questions, if you can come up so the board can hear it. I asked Steve to obviously take a good look at this. This is an issue that has to do with local reserves and out of SB 858. And he's done a lot of research on this. I asked him to take charge or lead on this particular issue. So, and I know Mark, you may ask some questions, Mike. I know you might. So,
That's Proposition 2, is it not, that we're
Yeah.
talking about?
yeah. So let's. I don't know. I know you know a lot more about it than I do. So.
Right. This basically, by passing this resolution, we basically maintain local control. And exercise power within the district's governing boards. And so with this legislation, there's a lot of push to try and limit reserves. And, you know, given the size of our district and given the fact that a 3% reserve for our district represents probably less than a half a month's worth of payroll. And so ideally we would want to have more than a 3% reserve and want to be able to exercise control over what our reserve levels are. And this resolution allows us to demonstrate that that's what we would like to do. As a small district, it's very important for governing boards to be able to determine what's an appropriate level of reserve. And so that's why we put this on the agenda. We think it's important that the board recognizes what its obligations are.
How does this increase our flexibility? I'm sorry.
I was going to ask a question, so I'm familiar with this one. Going to the CSBA meetings. So this is a resolution that many school districts are adopting to ask the state government to repeal some language they slipped into a law, a funding law, that would require. We know about the minimum required reserves. We all know that well because we had our LACO friends here helping us do this. There was some language slipped into a budget trailer law that says, but you can't have too much of a reserve. You can only have a maximum reserve of this. They want you to spend your money every year. It goes into effect if Proposition 2 is passed, which is the rainy day fund. Many districts, ourselves included, and I fully am in support of this resolution, feel that to force a district, certainly we understand the minimum reserves, but every year to hit a very small reserve window and perhaps spend more than you would otherwise spend and not allow yourself to build up a larger rainy day fund is very short-sighted. Mark has pointed out many, many times that it was the reserves that, and I wasn't on the board then, that this board had built up several years ago that allowed us to ride out, I'll say, 5 out of 6 years of the recession. And it was only because we had reserves that would be illegal under this law. So what this is trying to do is it's a resolution, I believe, that is calling upon the state government to repeal that language. And many other districts support it to enable maximum flexibility. That being, you know, you can't keep too much money in the bank, which is what the current language says. Is you could actually, they could zing you for not spending your money fast enough. So obviously I support it.
Yeah, it can certainly limit districts' abilities.
Did I get that right?
You did, you absolutely did. It can certainly limit districts' abilities to participate in long-term planning, you know, and any amount that's in excess of 3% has to be identified and discussed during meeting, and it sort of forces governing boards to make decisions based on short-term goals rather than long-term planning and long-term needs of the district and community. So that's part of why we place this on the agenda for tonight.
I actually, and I appreciate the superintendent and Steve for looking into this. I'd actually received a CSBA notification asking them to consider this resolution. And I've had a long conversation with the superintendent about it. I also had a long conversation as late as today with Steve on the issue. And so I just want to get it on the record, some of my observations on this as we move forward on it. When you read, my first concern with it is that Senate Bill 858 was already passed by the legislature and signed into law by the governor. But a language in that bill made, and that bill is huge. It covers everything from Child Care and Development Services Act stuff to the repeal of the Deferred Maintenance Fund, to the deletion of authorization for deferrals, which we're under, which by the way is a good thing, I think, if it works, so we don't have as many deferrals. It covers a wide swath of stuff. And then there's that little thing that they throw in there, and oh, by the way, it eliminates school districts' capacity to maintain reserves beyond their levels. So I looked through SB 858, really couldn't find it, and I ended up looking online and looking at the actual general election pamphlet up in Prop 2 to read the language in there, and Steve can't provide a clear answer because he doesn't have enough details on the issue. And as I read it, some of the language says that for most school districts, the maximum amount of local reserves under the new law would be between 3 and 10% of their annual budget, depending on their size. And the resolution we're using says that school districts can't exceed 2 to 3 times their minimum level. So is it 2 to 3 times? Is it
10%.
Is it 10% before the cap is there? And it's not clear. Because if we were actually able to be allowed to carry up to 10%, which would be a little over $900,000 for us, it wouldn't be such a bad thing.
But in the past, we've had 3 times that reserve.
Well, except we had it, and it was mentioned by Mike.
I say this,
Had 2000, had this been in effect in 2007, and we would have had to spend down that money, we would be in receivership right now. So I'm not sure where the cap actually is. Steve seems to think, in his wisdom from his contacts and the meetings he's attended, that the cap really is anything above your minimum. But what is truly the fact on this, it's hard to say. But what ultimately led me to want to support the resolution is, and again, this sounds like a good thing, is the state wants to have this rainy day fund so that it has money in the coffers. And by the way, it had that one time already. It's not like this is new. But the governor and the legislature stopped putting money in it when the economic collapse hit. And so this is basically going to force them to do it. Right, until they pass an emergency law that says we're not going to do it anymore. So frankly, I don't get the logic in it. But what it is doing, and on the surface it sounds like a good thing, the state is actually going to, in that reserve fund it wants to create for rainy days, it wants to create a sub-reserve account specifically for schools so that it can help schools get through the rainy day. However, that they won't put it, and the proposition clearly says this, that won't happen for several years. They won't put a dime into that account for several years, that's one. And two, if they ever do put money in it, any money they put into it is going to come off of the normal allocation of funds they would give us through a regular budget year. So I'm only going to serve you 3/4 of your meal today. I'm going to hold back a quarter in case you're hungry, which you will be because I only fed you 3/4 of what I normally do. So the logic of that makes little sense to me. And so I find that difficult to believe. But I think the most concerning thing to me is that if we dare maintain over, whether it's 2 to 3 times over or it's a hair over their minimum limit, whatever it is, it's unclear. At some point, if we're going to maintain more than what's allowed, we have to hold a public hearing to justify why we actually want to be frugal and save money for programmatic reasons and rainy day funds. We actually have to justify it. And the irony of it is this. It's supposed to be local control funding. But this legislation, it looks on balance, limits your local control. Okay? So I'm not sure about that. And the whole Prop 2 rainy day fund, so we can reserve money for hard times, apparently only applies to the state, not the school districts. So, in the final analysis, I believe that we need to pass this resolution, which isn't binding in any way. It is simply an ask on the part of school districts to the governor that he not enact that portion of Senate Bill 858 that is currently signed into law if Prop 2 were to pass. I'm at the point now where I actually don't even think I'm going to vote for Prop 2 because of all the extra trailer language that's in it and the negative impact it's going to have on us. And so that's my take on this as I read it. And so at the least we can do, whether you vote for Prop 2 or not is everybody's individual act and discretion, but in terms of our collective action, I would ask the board to please consider the passing of this resolution.
Let me ask you a question, Mark. Is this resolution based on the assumption that Proposition 2 is going to pass, and they're trying to have an immediate repeal of something that's not passed yet?
Here's what the gist of the resolution is. In the event that Prop 2 passes, in the event that it passes, the CSBA would like all school districts to have already asked the governor to not enact this portion of the law under SB 858.
Does he have that authority on a
It's a good question.
resolution?
It's a good question. I don't know.
It's not like it's the Senate and the Assembly sending a bill for a signature.
I don't know. I believe that all, my take on it is if the governor does not have the authority, is that he would have to go back to the legislature.
And that's what this calls for. Calls for repeal. Calls for the governor and the legislature to repeal the language. So whether or not they can not implement it is almost besides the point. The resolution calls for repeal.
The mechanism in which we would do this is unclear. I don't know what they would do. It would obviously require some act, and I don't know enough about SB 858 to know whether the governor has any executive authority in regard to the enacting of that law. Right now, it's dormant. Right now, it's not in effect. All those other parts of 858 are in effect. Repeal of deferred maintenance and all of that. What's in dormancy is the issue about school budget caps, reserve caps. So at least it's an effort on the part of school districts to let the governor know and the legislature know that we're not happy about this. I don't know. I read somewhere that there was a movement afoot to try and get another bond measure on the ballot so that people could vote on it, but that's an election away. That's an election away. If that were to even happen. So I think it's in our best interest to ask for its repeal. I think it is important to say there is language in Proposition 2 vis-a-vis 858 that a school district can make application to Layton, whatever county office of education the school district is in. In our case, it would be Layton, to ask them not to enforce it. But do we want to rely on LACO to do that? Again, it just becomes another encroachment on our ability to control a local budget.
Right. I can't imagine that county offices would be in support of this because it would be that much more difficult to maintain and have control over fiscal oversight of districts if all they're doing is keeping the base reserve. It just makes it that much more difficult for county offices to see what's going on with districts. And based on what I've heard, a lot of districts are in support of this resolution, and school boards are passing the very same resolution for that particular reason, so that they can have local control. It does, as you mentioned, Mr. Distaso, it runs contrary to the idea of the new funding formula. It really does. And so I think that if enough school boards pass this resolution, perhaps there'll be a message to Sacramento to really take a look at this issue more
Well,
closely.
I know the governor has sensitivity to it, so I'm a little surprised. I mean, LCFF was his baby, so I'm a little surprised that he didn't line item that.
It didn't include this, does it?
Yeah.
That's on Prop 2. This, what they're trying.
Yes, yeah. When he signed 858 in the law, 858 said that it put this whole provision in for caps and attached it to Proposition 2. It attaches to Proposition 2. So when you read Proposition 2, it lays that out. It has a little blurb in there about all the things that it will do to include capping school districts. And so that was written into the bill that he signed into law. So he knew that it was going to be part of this. And it's surprising to me that because he's the biggest promoter of the project. He's on commercial, he's on television, he's not saying anything about the school cap, noticeably, when he's up there talking about water and stuff all at the same time. It's kind of confusing. We're going to save water and save money too. He mentions nothing about the school districts, but he has to have known that it was in there.
What you bring up is a good point, but I don't think an intelligent voter has to take and put his two together. I think it's an entirely smart vote if one wanted to vote yes on Prop 1 and no on Prop 2.
Yes. But, you know, read the arguments. If you read the arguments pro and against in the election,
Yeah, set aside a lot of time.
the biggest issue that proponents have is the whole issue with the school cap. That's their opposition to it. Because it's this big wart sitting there on this otherwise totally different thing. So anyway, thanks, Steve. Any other comments, Frank? All right. Then in regard to the approval of the resolution, call the question. Aye. Okay, 12.2, change order 2 for the Vasquez High School project, phase 1 and 2. Do we have a move? I'll move. A second? A second. Superintendent.
Okay, so tonight we have change order 2. I have a couple individuals here tonight to assist me on a couple of them, and I'll get to them in just a second. I want to start with A and B. I'm going to turn on the projector. Okay, if you will, I don't know, hopefully it'll come up a little clearer, but what I'm talking about right here is A and B. It's in your board packet. A and B is basically, okay, if you look at A, let's just start with that. It's an upgrade to 12 heavy-duty recess hand dryers, and that's in phase 1. The reason why I'm asking the board to approve that is originally we had taken those out simply because we couldn't afford them. And at that time, we were trying to cut as much as we could. If you remember, our first bid that we went out with was significantly over. So we started trimming different elements that was originally in there. In my experience, A and B are primarily the same thing. Bathrooms are the worst or the most difficult to maintain at a high school. They're difficult at best, and so we're trying to figure out things that are basically bulletproof. So that kids can't damage, and it's there's some longevity, maintenance, etc. The A and B are basically that. And what I really like about the stainless steel piece, and you can of course wipe off the graffiti, and you can take out the anchored in the ceiling. And I mean, you know, they're really sturdy. Not to mention these particular ones, in the event that they're scribed or people scratch on them or this, you can take a steel wire brush and basically eliminate that real quick. And so that we can try to abate graffiti. Not, you know, that we weren't going to try to do it before, but I think this just makes it easier, and it's a much better advantage for the district, in my opinion. I just think it's a necessary. It's only $4,000 each, but the reason why I'm bringing it to you now, and some of this, what we're talking about, and keep in mind that each and every one of these, A, B, C, and D, are district initiated. Contractor's not coming to us, we're coming to them and saying, look, we want to begin to take some of the accoutrements that we took out of phase one and build back in phase two, simply because we anticipate and we fully believe that we're on track for getting the additional money for phase two, which is in excess of $14.4 million. So that's kind of why we're taking a look at A and B. Any questions on A or B?
So, for myself, I don't consider A and B to have anything to do with phase two. A and B, what I heard you say was we were going to get the price down. We threw a lot of stuff at the wall to get the price down. It came down. We've got a contingency fund, and there were some things that we threw at the wall that maybe we wish we hadn't. And it's prudent to put them back in.
That's correct.
Like things that are harder to damage, so I have no problem. That's how I conceptualize it.
That is correct.
Nothing to do with phase two.
No, and it does say phase one.
I thought I heard you say phase
Yeah.
two somewhere.
No, I'm saying when we get to C and D.
Okay, thank you. My mistake.
Anything else on A and B? Okay, now we're going to get into C and D, and if you would, Jim Bose is our district consultant and helps project manage the thing, and then also Tony Jacob is from JT Engineering, and he is also part of that pre-service construction agreement that we have in planning for phase two and phase one. And so, if you will, again, I know this is probably very difficult to see, but this is in essence what we're talking about. And he'll explain a little bit of that, and then and Jim, if you and Tony can go through and just discuss, you have the documents, and I've identified it on the top for you a little bit easier. We'll start talking, if you will, about item C.
Just for the record for me,
Yes.
it's not a question of the work or the need for the work or to have to justify the work.
Okay.
It's simply the mechanism in which we're funding it that I have questions and concerns about.
Okay, so do you want me to go over the
So for me, when our consultants say, well, this is what we need to do from a construction perspective, and it's going to tie, it's going to tie both sewer lines in together and consolidate them to service the entire campus, that makes complete sense, and I fully understand that. It's the funding aspect of it,
Okay.
not the construction aspect of it, that
Okay.
is a concern to me. However, if other board members
Okay.
want to hear out this, that's
All I was going to ask is can you just briefly show us what the change is? Briefly, I'm an engineer, I probably can handle it. And what about it enables phase B? And let me know if there's anything that you actually have to undo in the ground. That's where I'm sensitive. If you're telling me we're undoing some work to enable phase B, I'd be a little disappointed. I'm hoping I'm not going to hear that.
And please understand, before they get started, I want to make sure, again, this is district initiated. Simply because now we're, using the lack of a better term, I don't, it's co-mingling phase one and two, and trying to make sure that we value engineer this, and making sure that we don't spend money unnecessarily. And we'll kind of just briefly go over that. And making sure that we maximize our dollars as we, take a look at expenditures across the board.
we're not sitting in all these meetings, so we don't have that same level of confidence that you gentlemen might have.
Well,
We get, like you said, 72 hours ahead of time, we get something dropped on our lap and we're supposed to go, oh yeah, let's go ahead and approve that on good faith. And my experience has always been, if you're going to practice good governance, you never use good faith or hope for anything. It's prove it, show it, look at numbers, and don't do anything don't make any decisions unless it's based on empirical data. And we're a little bit short of the empirical data because, we don't know what those bids are going to come in like, and we don't know what's going to happen. And I would hate to have us have a situation where we run that risk. So,
well,
you're telling us, and the reason I'm asking the question is because I think the public deserves to have its representatives ask you, challenge you on it, and then have you try and convince us that that's the case. So you're saying with a high degree of confidence that you don't think there's going to be an issue with how those bids come in.
that's correct.
Okay, so
However, there's always a however. We've been, as Dr. Woodard pointed out, we've been through the bidding process a couple of times.
got bid
You may
one's really
recall
bad.
that We bid the brush and clearance of the site. Before we went out to bid on the first phase of this project. And why did we do that? Because of CEQA issues. It was $110,000 or $111,000 to brush and clear that site. It was expensive, but did it save you money? You bet, because the CEQA issue went away. And you folks took the risk based on our say-so. So all we can look at is the history and the success we've had. And, you know, I can't predict the future any better than anyone else.
Okay, so
But I'm here to tell you, the folks on this team busted their butts to get this project in under budget, and we intend to do that for phase 2.
Okay, so let's transition now to my final concern. I feel a lot more comfortable because I'm not involved in the bidding process. And maybe that's my problem, is in the past, on these kind of construction projects, I've been involved in it some way. I can see the paperwork. I can look the guy in the eye. We can close the door and fight it out. We can do whatever needs to be done. You know the dynamics of it, right?
That's what we're doing, yeah.
I'm not there for that. So here's the final concern that I have. We are now spending funds, as much as I hate to do it through the change order process. I understand it's the only vehicle we have. I don't think it's the right vehicle, but there's no other vehicle to get into. So trying and make it right afterward, I would like to see some process evaluated, because when you're out to bid, is the hookup for that line part of that phase 2 bidding that you're now going to do?
We're taking it out.
But they close tomorrow.
Pardon?
It closes tomorrow.
Understand that.
So it's already in.
The bid, you know, this is a design bid project under leaseback. We have the flexibility. We, the team, has the flexibility to negotiate with every subcontractor. We're not limited by.
So at some, let me take. Are you saying that at some point in the process, you're going to pull that cost out of phase 2 construction?
Yeah, definitely, because
Okay.
because when.
How do we then move that money back into our sub-account for change orders?
Well, with
So that
credits,
it doesn't get swallowed up.
with credits for work that we negotiate out of the scope.
But credits can go anywhere. Credits can go.
They go back to the district. I mean,
No.
it's
I
a
know
change
it goes back
order.
to the district, but when you're looking at a construction spreadsheet, those credits can be applied to gold bathroom stalls. They can be applied to any number of things.
Not without this board's approval. It would come. Those credits would come back to the board in the form of a change order, and it goes back into the pot for this project.
Here's what I would like to see it come back as. And then the board can decide what it wants to do with the money. I would like to see it come back identified as funds that are available for change orders. We identified $180,000. We're spending down on that $180,000. As that money, it's no problem, except
But we can identify that at the change order. When we get those credits, we can clearly identify that if that's the board's desire. And we can identify that as.
well, I don't know what the rest of the board wants to do at this point. I'm just saying that I want to make sure that we're accounting.
He wants the credits earmarked.
Earmarked.
If I can use that term.
Sure.
Because 6 months from now, we may forget that, oh geez,
We will forget.
the change order pot's kind of zero. And the credits came back and then perhaps really
Gonna
used
repopulate
some
it,
other
if
way.
you will.
Yeah, he's looking for a way.
Let me presume to be a city. Let me presume to be a city council on a city project. Didn't we earmark that money to go back for change orders? We have this issue that we need the money for now, and we don't have it. Yes, we did. And now I'm going to play the city manager. Well, yes, we did, but we actually had issues A, B, and C come up that we had to spend the money on, so we were unable to put it back into the change order. And you had given us the authorization, and then everybody's head starts shaking. So
Not in this case. Your analogy, analogy is not, would not stand in this case, but because the Ed Code, under the lease back program, obliges you to put the money back into the project. The board has the authority to put it anywhere you want within that project.
What I'm suggesting is that it doesn't just go anywhere in the project, because that could mean a gold bathroom stall. And I know you're saying we have to approve that. I don't care. What I would like to do is to see that money credited back to a line item, which we had when we approved the project. It showed $180,000 there for change orders. I would like to see that money earmarked to go back there.
We can identify that in the language, can we not?
Absolutely.
And I would like to see that
That's the board's
somehow.
desire, you bet.
That's the intent, by the way. That's our intent. That's what we expect to prepare a change order when we do get credit, and in effect, we don't use the word earmark, but in effect, put it back into that line item if that's what you want to do. That's what we'll do.
I would like to see it go back into the line item. And when would you anticipate approximately that this might happen? Based on your knowledge of the timeline as it stands today.
It's possible to have it at your scheduled special meeting on the 6th, is it, of October, or no later than November.
Okay.
Thank you.
So,
The 6th of November, or no later than the 13th of November. That's our anticipation.
so despite the learned knowledge that's here and the wisdom that you retain for our ability to perform our fiduciary responsibility, I would ask that on or about the day that we have that special meeting, that we have a discussion about whether that money has returned in some way and have it reflected as such.
If that's the board's desire, you can tell me now, and I'll put it as part of the resolution.
Well, I mean, it's open for discussion.
That's what
I'm
saying.
throwing it
By your
out there.
consensus. I mean, if you want to give your heads up now, I can.
Let me do this, let me make a motion that, as part of the approval of this change order, that process be put in place, that the money be put back into the specific change order line item that it's being taken from, and that we will have some visual of that on or about the special board meeting, or some explanation as to where it might be. That's my motion. So now the question is there a second for that?
No problem.
Easy to do.
Is there a second for that?
It could be implemented, what he's asking for?
I beg your pardon?
You can implement what he's asking.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. That was our intent originally, but we can do it explicitly.
My discussion on the amendment is that I'll vote for it if that's what you want, Mark, but I've trusted these people enough that I would have just voted yes on this 10 or 15 minutes of discussion ago.
I know you will.
I will go along with your motion if it makes you happy for the few dollars we're talking about here.
Well, I don't consider $112,000 a few dollars.
Well, when you compare it to 14 million, it sure looks little to me.
And that's how you end up.
A billion here, a
There's a
billion
lot
there,
of
that's
it's a
it.
percent.
Yeah.
Every percent.
Well, and again, it's just the uniqueness of a phase 1, phase 2 project.
It is.
And trying to get it done. I don't have a problem with any of what, the reason why we're doing it.
Mark, it is only 112, but it's all of our change order fund, so. you have-
They said it's no problem, so why don't we vote on your amendment?
Yeah, well, we can't, I completely trust these people too, the same way as Mark does, and appreciate them. But what he said is that we owe the public a vetting of this process, where we question them, and then.
Well, I think we've done that.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, but I think it's
So that's
important
everything
that we
that's
do.
going
At least if something were to go south, because even as knowledgeable as you gentlemen are, you said it yourself, you can't predict the future. I don't want to come back later and say, well, what did those bunch of bobbleheads do up there on Thursday
The
night?
biggest problem is going to be if
Did they do their fiduciary responsibility? Did they meet it or didn't they? So at least I feel comfortable that this money will flow back, because it's a little unique to be using a change order to do it.
Well, Mark, the biggest problem is going to be if this value engineering goes to waste, because we don't get our matching fund. That's the biggest problem, it's going to be that, right?
That's
Well,
the
you've been
first
apportioned the
answer.
fund, and historically, in this district and throughout the state, anyone who has received an apportionment As long as they file the right forms, the money flows
And
into
that's
the
actually
treasury.
not my concern. My concern is where the bidding goes.
Right.
That's my concern.
Preliminary estimates are well under what we.
That's my concern. And we don't know that.
Right,
So
we
this
don't,
group that's being asked to
you won't
vote on
know that
this
until the 6th.
doesn't, I know that.
May I
So I'm just looking, I'm looking for a safety net.
Actually, you'll
Looking
know
for
it before
something
the 6th, but
Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
May I ask
They
a quick
will.
question before we go?
yeah, they
Yes,
will.
I'm done.
So, is this work on the schedules, on that project's critical path?
Say that again?
Is this work on the project's critical path?
Absolutely.
Thank you, thank you.
So can we call the question on the amendment?
Well, I had a question. It just has to, not the overall amendment, or, I mean, actually, the amendment, we can vote on that, on Mark's amendment, yeah. We can vote
Well,
on
why
that.
don't we vote on the amendment?
Yes.
With the amendment.
Okay.
So as to the amendment, call the question.
Aye.
So the amendment is now part of the greater vote to approve the change order. So now, Ed, you can proceed.
It's just a general question, and I think we should put the wording of your amendment in the, on record. So maybe you can do more record now for Lisa or something. We have the exact. I just had some general questions. I don't think that it applies to what we're doing overall here. But I just want to know some of these estimates, are these when it comes to excavators and the labor and things like that, are these estimates of what's going to be used, or if it doesn't take that long to do it, are we still charged that? How does that work, for instance?
It is the budget, and if the scope of work reduces, then those numbers will reduce in the form of a credit and come back to you.
And if it's above that, do they come
They
back
eat
to
it.
the
If
board?
it's above that, they eat it.
Okay. Good. That was my only question. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. As to the approval of the agenda
I feel
item.
much better that we're not ripping things. I appreciate you coming to us.
What the amendment is calling for is that any credits that we get,
We're going to actually put it in the resolution of any kind of credit that goes back to, we'll earmark it, we
reapply
use
to
that
To the change order.
I don't know if it's a fund.
It's going to be a refund to the change order line item.
So I guess we're really on 12.2 now.
Yeah, so as to the overall approval of the change order under 12.2, call the question.
Aye.
Okay, future agenda items. We have a tentative board meeting for November 6th. We're still on for,
Well, we're hoping to make that date, and we'll see.
hoping to make.
Meaning that,
We just voted on it, and now we're gonna hope to make.
well, what I'm saying is based on when those bids come in, and based on whether or not, things work out.
Well,
and all
close
the
this
stuff
tomorrow,
that
right?
we-
So somebody doesn't have their bid, we do that.
Well, absolutely, but I guess I'm trying to plan for the worst, hope for the best. This is my hope, is the best case scenario is November 6th. Worst case is November 13th. That'll be the week after. We want to get it done on the 6th, so that we can obviously process all the paperwork and get it to Sacramento. Worst case scenario is the 13th, but that still allows us time to get it to Sacramento.
I'm just going back to the schedule. So the proposal, these are my top points. The plan was October 1st, the RFP was 10/8, it went out just like what you said it would, and the proposal was due November 1st. So, when you say the proposal, that's a proposal from those guys.
No, well, JTS, not.
That's right, JTS, sorry,
Yeah.
they must not be here.
But remember, there's legal documents, contracts, guaranteed maximum prices, negotiations, looking at the bids, going through making sure they're qualified
Try to
bids.
back into November 1st. So they hit all that, because that's part of November 1st, right?
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
yeah.
Requires the subcontractor bids to come in, did you say tomorrow? Is that what I heard you guys say?
That's the
Bids close tomorrow with JTS Construction.
Yeah,
That's the bids to them,
That's their closing bid.
yeah.
from their subs. Okay, and so that leaves.
Then we go through the vetting process.
One we 30th, so you got like 6 days to vet, negotiate with the subs, and turn it all around to a proposal that costs.
And put it together in a guaranteed maximum price and a contract, and that's what I'm saying.
Obviously, Mark, they have to go tomorrow, it's scheduled. But that's
You see, it's a lot of work to get done, and if it's, the bids are great, and it comes in excellent, and then we'll make the 6th. If not, I'll push it to the 13th.
In regard to other future agenda items, where are we with the revised big map report?
Actually, I should have a draft, I'm gonna say Monday.
You said that last
I
Friday.
know that, and to be honest with you, I was waiting on that tentative ruling from the judge to see what changed in our big map report, and if there was anything in there. But I give you a draft.
Well,
Just-
no, I want to get it, have we had any discussion with LACO about having it posted on their webpage?
What I wanted to do is give it to the board for approval, and then you guys basically bless it, and the answer is we're gonna forward to them with a letter for the board president, and I'll draft that for you, basically requesting. I
Right
have
now, it
notified
continues
them
to
of that
stand
request.
as fascist propaganda, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, and I'm
The
told
way it
that's
sits on
the
that
request.
website now,
Yeah.
full of inaccuracies and
Yep.
misstatements.
And I think we got a fantastic document, I honestly do. And we're gonna have actual evidence associated with ours.
So you're looking at bringing it maybe to the board by,
I should have a great working draft by Monday. And I have one now, it's just, some things need to be tweaked, including evidence. We're looking at artifacts and referring, and there's a lot of, referring back to certain elements and documents where they don't even refer to different, evidence. So we're gonna try to do that. It's complicated. It's a complicated document.
okay. All right, very good.
On the calendar, where are we at with what Mark had asked last time about the baseball coach upgrade? Remember he said start soon or something like that?
Yeah, I think, Ty is in the process of, obviously looking at that and seeing, and he'll go through the interview process, and as soon as that, he and his committee selection have selected somebody, we'll bring it to you for review and approval, or whatever you decide.
Is this affecting the season?
No, not at all. It's only November, it's a spring sport.
We're doing it early because of,
And they should be doing workouts, and, there's different things and elements, but I hate to put it this way, but the only sport that's really impacted significantly is football. All the other sports are club sports.
Where in the world did you do that, Ruben?
The fact is,
That's the most important sport is baseball.
it is, but I'm saying it's also a club sport. High school is really not where it's at, to be honest with you. It's really more of a club sport and a travel. So,
It is, all around.
the only one that really impacts is football. I'm saying, it's a great sport, sure, Larry, my son plays it, I get it.
Is that with a round ball, or is that the one with
Oh, okay. Tired.
this thing you call football?
Focus.
listen, good one too. Okay, moving off of future agenda, there's nothing to speak of on the calendar, it's there. Closed session, we had discussion with regard to a active lawsuit, no actions were taken, nothing to report out on, no vote. So we'll move to 16.0 adjournment, we have a move.
Move.
All second.
Mr. Fox is a second. To adjourn, call question.
Aye.
9:15.